All right, welcome everybody. My name is Steve Hiss. I'm the Director of Career Services and Alumni Engagement at the Batten School. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this week's Batten Hour. Lots of faces here that you may not recognize, so I'm going to start by introducing our two student panelists who are then going to introduce and interview our guest speaker. So it's my pleasure to introduce Bobbi Morris and Garrett Hicks. And Bobbi is an A school student, actually a third-year A school student, and Garrett is a first-year MPP student with us in the Batten School. And they were part of a team of 7 interns that we had working for us this past summer to help us identify methods and ways to establish community in this strange times that we're in right now. And one of the recommendations and findings from their work was to increase our awareness of and work with and just in general consideration for students with disabilities. And that's how Matthew Shapiro is joining us today. So I will turn it over to Bobbi, who will introduce our guest speaker and kick off the event. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Steve. So I came in contact with Matthew during the internship this summer, so I'm going to read his bio now. As a person with a disability, Matthew Shapiro has spent most of his life motivated to teach those he has met how to better understand the disability community and inclusion. Through this work, it has become his life's mission to educate others regarding disability-related issues. With this thought in mind, in December of 2014, he created Six Wheels Consulting, working with those in both the private and private and public sectors. He hopes to expand their understanding of disabilities and inclusion to give them the tools they need to use in any environment. Matthew has had the privilege of sitting on numerous disability boards and speaking at a variety of conferences, both locally and nationally.
Thank you so much, Bobbi. That was an amazing introduction. I'm so excited to be here, I guess this afternoon, and have a great conversation. So I'm ready to dive in.
Sweet. Well, Matthew, I have the pleasure of asking you the first question. So I would love if you could share with us the story behind the creation of Six Wheels Consulting and sort of the steps that you took to establish your own consulting firm.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Garrett. Thank you. So I was laying in bed one night in December of 2014, and I have always known that I wanted to sort of work in the disability space. I had tons of job interviews and thought I had done really well in job interviews, but never got to the point where I was formally offered a full-time employment opportunity based on those job interviews. And so I was getting really frustrated that I was not finding, work and jobs and things. And so I had been out of school for a while. I graduated in December of 2013 from VCU and was looking for work. And so because of all those sort of challenges of not getting that full-time job offer, I was laying in bed one night and I said, let me take my years of experience of doing youth engagement work with youth with disabilities, which is sort of where I got my start in disability work, and my passion for public speaking. My greatest strength is my ability to talk. And so that's a good or a bad thing, depending on if you're talking to my mom or if you're talking to someone else. Sometimes my parents wish I could be a little bit more quiet, but that wouldn't be me, certainly if that was the case. But I decided to sort of meld all of those strengths in December of 2014 and try and turn it into a consulting business to sort of challenge the way people think about, talk about, and approach disability. We do very much the bare minimum as it relates to disability and disability awareness and inclusion in our country. The ADA is celebrating, which the ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it's celebrating its 30th birthday this year, and people with disabilities still face tons and tons of challenges, even though the ADA has been in place for 30 years. And so I decided to sort of take all that frustration and all those strengths that I have and turn it into Six Wheels Consulting. It's called Six Wheels because I'm a wheelchair user, and there are 6 wheels on my wheelchair. There are 2 small ones in the front that no one sees, and if we didn't count those, it would mess up the brand altogether. So we don't do that. But I, again, really wanted to sort of bring a voice and really challenge the way society sort of talks about disability issues and the disability population. And so I do that in 3 main ways. Consulting, so like doing assessments of spaces, not from an ADA perspective, but from a common sense perspective. A lot of public speaking. I love speaking at conferences and at universities and elementary schools, all kinds of stuff to expose people to disability, and then lobbying work as well. I'm a lobbyist in the Virginia General Assembly, and I'm a political nerd at heart. So any chance I can get involved in the political process, I'm all about it. And so the second part of that question of like how easy or hard was it? It was actually very easy to get an LLC license. And I would certainly advocate for anyone who's interested in kind of starting their own thing, consider doing it, because literally you have to go online, you fill out, an LLC certificate with the state, and you've got your LLC there. Now, I also had to develop logos and other things, and continue and constantly try to get my name out there for the work that I do. But that's the fun and the challenge of it all. So definitely made great strides in those areas, have a lot more work to do, and would really like to get kind of on a broader, on a larger scale and a larger stage. So that's just the continual work that happens on a day-to-day basis.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So what do you feel are the biggest stumbling blocks to achieving equity for persons with disabilities?
Oh, how much time do we have? Because there are so many. So that's, I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is society's full understanding of how people with disabilities can be better integrated into our communities and into our society. I often still get from people, "I'm glad you're out today," as if I am supposed to be at home, not doing the work that I'm doing and not engaging in, civil work and doing things to help my community. And I don't think people make those comments in like a malice sort of way, but in a way that, like, again, if we can get beyond to where people don't see us as like, oh, we should be at home, or we should, be hidden away from the rest of society, then more so that, like, we can all work together and we can make our society fully inclusive so that everyone can have access to everything. I think that would be a huge step in the right direction. So that's one, is like society's, I guess, misinterpretations or misunderstandings around people with disabilities. 2 is still some of those physical barriers that still exist even with the ADA, and things are still not accessible and still not inclusive. Something can be accessible by the standards of the ADA, but not allow for full inclusion in that space still. There are many things around Virginia and in Richmond where I live that, like, by the standard of the law, they're accessible, but I still can't gain full access to it easily. And I still have to always wonder, can I get into this place, or is somebody going to say something sort of ableist or negative in a way if I try to go into that space? And so if we can get beyond kind of all of those negative stigmas and things, I think that would be a huge step in the right direction for a lot of us. But we still have a lot of work to do in that area.
Sure. I'm curious because you mentioned that the ADA obviously is not the be all end all of fixing the problems that our country faces in this space.
Yeah.
What do you think when looking at the ADA specifically are some of the major obstacles and shortcomings of that law that still present obstacles to people with the different abilities today?
Great question. So I think it's very rigid, right? Like it says, the ADA says like a door width has to be 30 inches, or the height of a light switch has to be so on and so high, and I get that from like an architect standpoint that says like a builder has to know, here are the standards that make this accessible and whatnot. But I would almost challenge, like, why does a door have to be at 30 inches? Why can't it be at 40 inches? Like, why can't it be a situation where it's best done to the need of the person, right? Like, I would love for everything in the world to have wider doorways. And so why do we have to be so rigid and say a doorway has to be 30 inches, right? Like, who's to say I couldn't go to an architect and say, hey, could you make it 40 inches because that's the width of my wheelchair? But so often, if we don't do that, then we're not up to code, right? And so if we're not up to code, then like the business owner or the house or the whatever gets dinged for it. And so I'm not saying completely get rid of standards, right? Because I do think we need standards, but I think we could also have like ranges within those standards, right? So that like if you're hitting them on one end or another end, you are still within the code, but it might also be more beneficial to the person that needs it based on their disability. Because like I said, I would love wider doorways and wider hallways and all kinds of stuff, because there is so much stuff that, again, is to code, quote unquote, but still doesn't work, right? And so we have to get beyond that thing where, all right, it's up to code, but then it's also functional, right? Like functionality, in my opinion, sometimes is more important than code standards and things like that. Did that answer your question, Garrett?
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So notwithstanding the fact that you weren't a UVA student, through your advocacy, you were actually involved in one of the most important and high-profile access-related changes at UVA, the installation of the ramp on the lawn. Can you describe that process for you, and what do you think should come next?
Yeah. So as I said, I'm not a Wahoo from a student standpoint, but I'm definitely a Wahoo at heart. My brother and my sister-in-law both graduated from UVA. My brother 2 times over, undergrad, and got his MBA at UVA. And I am a season ticket holder for football. We took a rough one this weekend, but that's okay. And no fans are allowed in attendance right now, so that's hurting my heart a little bit, but I'd rather be safe during this crazy time. But so I say all that to say, like, I've spent a ton of time in Charlottesville and have spent a ton of time on campus, not only from that standpoint, but I've also been part of the Sorensen Institute 2 times over, and just have great roots, I would say, in Charlottesville. And so where the ramps on the lawn sort of came into play, my brother was fortunate enough during, I believe, his senior year of undergrad. I can't remember, it's been a while, but I believe it was his senior year of undergrad. He was fortunate enough to live on the lawn because he was and is very academically gifted. And we would always have to, or we would always go visit him on the lawn and hang out in his room and stuff. But as a wheelchair user, it was, I should say, before the ramps were installed, really challenging to gain access to the lawn. And so the ramps actually came about because of efforts from my brother during I believe, the last part of his undergrad, and then when he went back and got his MBA, to really work with other students with disabilities on campus to to get those ramps installed, and they look fantastic. I've been there since they've been installed. They blend in super nicely with the lawn. You wouldn't even know that they were there unless you knew where you were going. And so I attribute all that to, one, the amazing students on campus that live with disabilities, but then also like my brother having lived with me and had that experience, and then also having started Disability History and Awareness Week on campus. I first started a Disability History and Awareness Week on campus at VCU when I was there, and then he sort of tried to take that and bring it to campus at UVA, or sorry, to grounds, my apologies, at UVA as well. And so I think that's really where all of the work and the conversation sort of started. And I think a culmination of that is getting those ramps in place. In terms of where to go next, broadly, I would say just add more accessibility, right? I still think UVA is a beautiful campus, but it is still very, very hard to navigate as a wheelchair user. That's not to say that it's impossible, because it's not. I've done it many, many times. But I think more accessibility features could be kind of included on campus, be it more automatic doors. I would love, I was talking about society earlier, but I would love in a society where every door in society, whether it be on UVA's campus or anywhere, had an automatic door or was sliding doors, right? Because I love the independence of being able to open the door myself. Now, that's not to say I can't obviously ask for help. I'm certainly fine and willing to do that. But just that level of independence and freedom to be able to do that would be great. And so more features like that, more ramps, more maps and things that sort of illustrate here's where the accessible routes are. I know I've seen some of that at UVA, but I think if we could again have a broader sort of version of that, that would be great. And then also maybe sort of doing like an app or something, so that if people wanted to have access to know where all the accessibility features on campus are, they can either use the map like I mentioned or use an app to help figure that out. So I think UVA is incredible. I think UVA could do a lot more to help even make it that much stronger and that much more beautiful of a campus for all, whether they be students without disabilities or students with disabilities, for sure.
Thank you for that, and for the work that you've done at UVA to make it more accessible. So what, in your opinion, are the best ways for students to become more involved in advocacy-related work for persons with disabilities? So
I know that there are a ton of disability-related organizations on campus at UVA. I know, Bobby, you and I've had some conversations about many of them. So those of you students that are on the call today and want to figure out how to get involved, start there, right? Get involved in the local campus groups that talk about and think about disability. There are also groups all around Virginia and nationwide, so that if this is something that you're really passionate about, engage with those groups and sort of have your voice be heard. I will say one of the things that I think we desperately need as a community is folks who have no connection to disability whatsoever, sort of in our corner to help continue to advocate for making changes that best support people with disabilities. One of the things I always share about disability, or two of the things, is disability is a special minority group in the sense that it is the only minority group that any of us can join in the blink of an eye. And it's the only minority group that we're all going to eventually join as we age and need different accommodations along the way. So one of the big proponents of my work is why aren't we doing more now while we are all capable to a certain extent, right, to be able to make society more accessible, more inclusive, so that when we do get to the point where we have aged and need accommodations as we're older, or, you know, God forbid, some sort of accident happens or an illness happens or something happens to where you're now living as a person with a disability, your world is better set up for you, right? And I've been disabled all my life. I haven't lived a different life. But I know tons of people who have transitioned from being able-bodied individuals to being people with disabilities. And, you know, let's again set up a world that's just better all around for all people. Because the other thing to think about is a lot of things that help people with disabilities also help able-bodied individuals. How many of us on the call love curb cuts, right? If you are a mother and have a young child with a stroller, you know, how great is that curb cut to be able to use to help navigate that stroller? Or if you're, you know, trying to get to an apartment in New York City, right, and you have all your luggage with you, how great are those curb cuts for, you know, dealing with luggage? Why couldn't we do more things like that to help everybody? And more importantly, help people with disabilities along the way. So just more engagement from individuals without disabilities, I think would be great. And then just, again, sort of thinking outside of the box on what are things that we can do to do more, to really call attention to a lot of the challenges that I've talked about a little bit. And again, we really just sort of need, you know, soldiers in the fight, so to speak, because, you know, people with disabilities are definitely the ones shouting from the rooftops around policy issues. We'll talk about that here in another couple of questions, I know. But, you know, we need other allies that believe in, you know, making the world more inclusive and accessible for all.
Thank you. So shifting to your comment about policy, you bring a bipartisan experience to your lobbying efforts. Lobbyists sometimes get a bad rep, often because their work is largely misunderstood. Can you share with your experience as a lobbyist in this arena?
So first of all, I'm one of the nice lobbyists, right? I'm not one of the lobbyists that you see on the movies or on TV shows. But I love my lobbying work. As I stated, I am very much a political nerd, and so I lobby in the Virginia General Assembly on the state level for an organization called the Virginia Association of People Supporting Employment First. And so we advocate for getting people with disabilities employed in competitive and integrated employment settings where they're working with and without peers with disabilities, and they're making at or above minimum wage. Instead of the counter to that, which is known as sheltered workshops, where they are often sort of segregated from the rest of society. They work only with peers with disabilities, and they tend to make well below minimum wage per day. So sometimes they come out of the situation where they're making like $10 a day, right, for their work. And oftentimes it is sort of assembly specific work where there are people with disabilities are like putting stuff in bags or organizing things. And we believe that people with disabilities can do so much more in our communities. And so I go down to the General Assembly 4 days a week during a normal session and try to work with legislators to get our initiatives through the Virginia General Assembly. I am negotiating changes to policy issues. I'm talking to legislators. I'm talking to staff people or staff members, excuse me, and trying to get sort of policy changes done. One policy change that we were finally able to get done this past session, not the special session that's currently going on. Currently, the Virginia General Assembly is in a special session because our budget for the state is has been decimated by COVID relief efforts, and so they've been trying to figure out how to fix the budget, so to speak. But during the past session, we were able to get language removed from the Code of Virginia that referred to people with disabilities as physically deficient and mentally, it was physically deficient and mentally something. I can't remember the mental part, but no one with a disability, I am not physically deficient, right? Because I am a person with a disability. And the fact that that language was in our code was quite frightening. And we were able to, create a coalition of other disability organizations like the ARC of Virginia, our organization, Virginia ABSI, the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities, and several other disability organizations in Virginia to get that language taken out of the code. And so, that's a small win for us, but it's a win. And we are gearing up now to go into the 2021 session. I think the 2021 session will be fascinating because I anticipate most of the 2021 session is going to be virtual. So I'm curious to see how that will go. And so we're working on our legislative agenda for session now, and we're gearing up for that. So I'm just ready to jump back into the fray because, like I said, anytime I can get into the political arena, I'm all for it. And I did notice there was a comment from Marissa. Thank you. Yeah, I agree that, language is so important. And I appreciate your saying that because I agree too that the language we use is so valuable.
So looking into the future a little bit, with the election less than a month away and a new Supreme Court justice to potentially be confirmed, what are some of the most pressing needs on the horizon for policy reforms that will advance the rights of persons with disabilities? And maybe to add a little bit to that, what are also some obstacles that you foresee in advocating for those new reforms?
So I'll answer the first question first. To be honest, I am very nervous about a new Supreme Court structure, right? We know that the court is leaning towards becoming a more conservative bend to it. And historically, conservative ideologies don't tend to play well for people with disabilities, right? I have read and heard from several people that the ADA might be on the chopping block to a certain extent from the Supreme Court because businesses often feel like they are still dealing with an undue burden of having to make things accessible and inclusive, even 30 years after the ADA. So I'm very concerned about that and what that could potentially look like, because if we start to strip away the rights that, protect me and other folks with disabilities, you're potentially opening up a giant can of worms in that regard. And so, hoping that's not the case, but I know I've seen lots of conversations around that. The other policy thing that I can think of is that whole minimum wage piece that I talked about. There is a certificate in the Fair Labor Standards Act known as a 14C certificate, and that allows those shelter workshops that I was talking about earlier to pay that sub-minimum wage. And there's a lot of talk that we're going to hopefully very soon, if the Senate decides to do anything, right, and be productive in any manner, one of the bills that might be on the table is to eliminate that 14C certificate so that those shelter workshops can no longer pay sub-minimum wage to disabled workers. So those are two big policy areas that I can think of right off the top of my head. And then Garrett, what was the second part of your question again?
The second part was sort of what the obstacles are in achieving those goals. So I'm kind of curious, what do you hear from legislators when they're opposing your efforts, and sort of how do you combat those arguments in the opposition?
Yeah, that's always the fun part, right? Because you're going to have people who disagree, and you're going to have I have had many conversations and seen many legislators on the floor of both chambers. I won't name legislators specifically, but I've seen many, many legislators refer to people with disabilities as those people, right? And have a very sort of negative understanding of people with disabilities. So like 90% of my work in doing my lobbying work is like really trying to change how people think about people with disabilities from a capability standpoint, right? And knowing that people with disabilities can be capable, even with the most severe disabilities, they can be capable if they are given the right accommodations and supports to be successful. But we have to shift the way our policymakers and our policies allow for that to happen. And so really, how do I combat that? I try to come with data. I try to come with stories of people who are in competitive and integrated settings and talking about how they are successful and love their jobs and love making good wages. But it's definitely an uphill climb. And I can tell you there's been many times where I've wanted to bang my head up against the wall a little bit in frustration because the mindset, I feel, this is me speaking personally, the mindset that sometimes is in the Virginia General Assembly building is one from like 1944, right? And like not having high expectations for people with disabilities. So still have a lot of work to do, still have a lot of fight, ready to continue to fight. And I know that we'll make great strides, but we're going to have to continue to do it and see what happens. But I hope that answered your question, Garrett.
Yeah, that was great. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Just to, this is to all the attendees. We're sort of transitioning into a Q&A function now. So if you guys have any questions in the audience, feel free to put those in the Q&A function, and we'll be happy to ask those to Matthew so you can get those answered.
Yes. I love questions, so don't be afraid. And don't be afraid, like there's really no questions that are off limits. I've not come across any questions that I've been uncomfortable answering. So anything that anyone wants to know about my work or how I navigate the world personally, please don't hesitate to ask.
Matthew, I'll ask one real quickly because apparently
Please.
I can't type in the Q&A, so I'm actually going to have to ask.
Okay.
What challenges have this current environment, COVID-19, presented for schools, businesses, and folks with disabilities? What are those?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Thank you very much. So I think there's some good and some bad, right? I will take it from my perspective. I am the most extroverted extrovert that you will meet. And so not being able to see faces and see, and engage with people, that's where I get a lot of my energy from. And so when I see all these wonderful faces on a Zoom meeting, I get so excited because it's like other people. This is what it's like. And so that has been really hard. I know that people with disabilities have been very nervous throughout this whole time because a lot of our population they have, immune challenges and they have other challenges that a lot of us are choosing to stay home, exclusively. I have probably been out of my house, 100 times or less in the last 7 months, right? Like I'll go to some doctor's appointments and I finally had like a work event that I had to go to last week. I was doing like a photo shoot for something and I went with my mom and we were like, this is weird because we'd not been out to do like an event, so to speak, in 7 months. And so I think there's been a lot of nervousness. I think there has been a lot of uncertainty. Now, on the flip side to that, with all of the ways that we are engaging technologically and doing things with technology and the technology we have available, I think that also opens up a massive door to people with disabilities to actually engage more. The unemployment rate for folks with disabilities is astronomically high compared to individuals without disabilities. And one of the things that we have always said is let people with disabilities work from home. But businesses have often said, oh, we can't do that because that would require us to spend tons and tons of extra resources in accommodations and other assistive technology to allow you to work from home. Well, now that excuse is null and void because a lot of us have been working from home. Now some of us have shifted back to going back to work, but there's still a lot of us who are still also working from home. And so now is the perfect time to capitalize on the tremendous skills and talents that people with disabilities bring to the table and allow them to work from home. And I've also heard that many businesses are actually kind of shifting to working from home permanently because they're finding, their workers are more efficient. They don't have to spend so much money on overhead and building space. So there's been a mixed bag of, I think, good and bad opportunities during this crazy pandemic that we're all currently living through.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So one question that I would ask is in regards to college admissions. Obviously, we're all college students, so this is pretty relevant to us. Are there any steps that, in your opinion, that colleges should take to expand opportunities for student applications from students with disabilities?
So that's a really interesting question, and I'll be also transparent and say that I when I was in high school, I applied to UVA and did not get in. I applied to I think 5 schools and got into 2. One was on a contingent basis where I had to take and pass some summer school classes, and then I got into VCU outright, and so just decided to go there. Obviously, I certainly want to make it clear that I think you need to meet the academic requirements that a school has, whether it be UVA or VCU, any school in the country. However, and I think we're getting away from some of this too. We're getting away from looking at standardized test scores and certain things like that, which I think is a huge benefit, because I will tell you, I was and am not the greatest standardized test taker, right? But that also doesn't mean that I could not have been a huge asset to a grounds like the University of Virginia. I may not have been the 4.0 student or the, whether it be at like Harvard, UVA, and again, any of the schools. I'm not trying to single out just UVA. But, I think a lot of times admissions sort of gets bogged down by like, here's a standard that a student must sort of fulfill. However, like I said, it's not like I was a flunking and a failing student, right? I was a decent student, but I had so many other characteristics that if I had gotten on grounds at UVA, I guarantee you I would have made a substantial impact in the life at UVA, and I did that at VCU. And so, again, I understand that we need to have standards, right? But like, are there ways that we can start to look at the applicant as a whole, right? And yes, they may not have the 4.0, but could there be an element to, all right, yes, they don't have the 4.0, but if we get them on our school, if we get them to our school, can they end up being, the president of the class or bring significant changes to policies on a campus? And so that has sort of always been something that bothered me about the admissions process. And like I said, I think we're shifting away from that, where like we're not having to take as many standardized tests, and they don't look at those so closely. But I would love to see more of that, where you're looking holistically at the student and not just at like the grade point averages and all the extracurriculars and other things. And I think we could do that. It's just we would have to figure out how to do that.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah.
So there's a question from Sarah in the Q&A. So how did you come up with a new language for what to include in the Virginia Code, like regarding removing the previous inappropriate language? How long did that process take?
Yeah, so thank you, Sarah, for the question. That's a great question. So we actually didn't come up with new language. I'm sorry if that was unclear. But what we did was just remove the language that was in there. And so it's like no longer in code. And so like our decision to eliminate that was pretty direct and simple, right? Because again, I'm not physically deficient because I am a person with a disability. I am very capable of doing a lot of things. I just happen to have to do them differently, and like creative ways to do those things. And so, that language didn't make sense in the context of what should be in the code. And so our big push was to remove it. We didn't think of anything to replace it, because I think if you replaced it, you are still promoting like the fact that it's okay to be different and be a person with a disability, which it is, but like you don't want that explicitly stated in the code, because that then allows policymakers to have loopholes in allowing people to be paid some minimum wage and do other things that could negatively affect people with disabilities. I hope that answered your question, Sarah. What other questions can I answer?
So this person asked this question anonymously. And
Yes.
they said, how, if at all, do you avoid cynicism around changes? You mentioned policy changes around admissions. What if the lack of change is intentional because it benefits a certain set of people? And I think sort of, how do you avoid that negativity?
Yeah, so cynicism is definitely a tough challenge, and I definitely think there are people that just don't want to make changes and make things more accessible, which drives me crazy, right? Because there's so much benefit to opening up your business, your school, your whatever. There are 56 million Americans in this country who live with disabilities. That is 20% of the population, right? So that's 1 in 5 people live with a disability. And so why are we not actively doing more, again, to make things accessible? Because that's another population of people that can be customers. That's another population of people that can be workers. That's another population of people that can be presidents and like make significant changes in all areas of our society. But because we continue to like be cynical, using the words of the question, right, and like kind of laugh it off, you're missing out on all of those things. People with disabilities and their companions and their friends and their families, they have $220 billion in discretionary income that they can use in our communities. But if our stores have a step to get into them, or there's an owner that doesn't believe they should make something accessible, there could be something in that store that I want to buy, but because you are making it inaccessible to me, I can't go in there and spend money, which helps you in the end, because you want to make as many sales as you possibly can, and you want to have as much revenue as you possibly can. And one of the things I can definitely tell you is people with disabilities are loyal, right? So like they know that if a business thinks about disability inclusion, they know that their space is accessible. They know that they have done training around staff members and all that kind of stuff. You're going to get people with disabilities going back to that place of business over and over again, and they're going to tell other people to go back to that place, which again in turn is going to be more business for you. So you're going to have loyal customers that continue to want to do business there. You're going to have family members who are with that person, because I never travel alone, right? I'm always with somebody, be it a friend or a family member. They also might buy something in that store or eat at that restaurant. And so again, there's money in it. And so it's always I've always scratched my head as to like why why businesses don't take that more seriously. And a lot of the, like when I'm doing my assessments, a lot of the things that I think about, I'm doing things that, you know, are like moving furniture around so that you can have more open space. Don't have as many chairs in a space, right? One of the things that drives me crazy is, and I use this example all the time, I go to conferences on a regular basis. And one of the things that drives me crazy is when they put 300 chairs in a room when 100 would be fine, right? Or 50 would be fine, depending on who's attending the event. Because those extra 200 or 150 chairs become additional obstacles to allowing me or somebody with a disability to navigate that conference space freely. So, yeah, that's a great question, and I get it, but it's a frustrating one at that.
Okay, so I personally have a question. So do you have any resources or like anything that's in mainstream media that has like representation on specifically on disabled people? Like something that came to my mind at first was the Netflix documentary Crip Camp, that people that aren't necessarily like closely connected to disability can like inform themselves about things.
So I think we are making great strides in disability representation. I think from a media standpoint, yes, we have the things like Crip Camp. I absolutely adore The Good Doctor, which is a show on ABC, I believe, that the main character has autism and savant syndrome, and he's a doctor. And so it's like how he navigates that whole space. That's amazing. There's been shows recently like Speechless on, I think, ABC as well, where there was a person who was a wheelchair user. And so many of those episodes I could relate to and be like, and have seen myself in those instances. So you're starting to see more and more representation of disability in media. I would highly, highly, highly recommend anyone go check out the Crip Camp documentary if they haven't done so already. It's incredible. In terms of resources, I know that like there's a big push within media companies to do better representation of people with disabilities. And the thing I would add to that is if you're going to do disability representation, and this goes for colleges and things too, you know, like show people with disabilities on UVA's website. So show people with disabilities on Batten's website. Have them in commercials and ads to talk about the diversity of UVA. But so make it so that they're seen more consistently. I didn't really give you resources there, Bobby. I'm sorry. That was a bad response. I apologize.
It's fine.
I thought it was great. So here's a question from Jill, and we might have time for one more after this. But
I know both Drew and Jill, so it's nice to see you all participating. I miss you all.
Yeah, so they said they're extremely happy to see and listen to you. And they had a follow-up question regarding companies' hiring of disabled people. They said that they agree the work-at-home environment's open to opportunities for disabled people, but the diversity and inclusion conversation is a really crowded one since there are lots of underrepresented people in companies right now. So they're curious how we can focus companies on people with disabilities amidst this pretty crowded conversation around inclusion right now.
Yeah, so I think we could spend a whole nother hour just on that, right? I think that the first thing I would say is that we have to expand what our definition of diversity and inclusion means, right? Often when we talk about diversity and inclusion, typically it's around race and gender and ethnicity and potentially sexual orientation, right? But so often I'm in the room or I'm part of those conversations and I would say, well, where's your disability representation, right? Because disability, again, is one of the minority groups that can literally touch all of those aspects, right? You can be a person of color, you can be part of the LGBTQ community, and you can be somebody who is disabled. So you're getting sort of that trifecta of of all of it. And so let's expand what that conversation means to make sure if we're having diversity inclusion conversations, make sure disability is represented in that conversation and taken seriously as part of it. And so, I would challenge anybody who's trying to do a disability or a diversity inclusion event, think more broadly and think about how can we make this event accessible? How can we make sure disability is represented here? And so on and so forth. I know we're running short on time. I wish I had a little bit more time to dive into that. But to me, it's really expanding that conversation to mean more around diversity and inclusion.
Awesome, thank you.
So there's another anonymous question. So disability seems to be the preferred term. Does that vary by individual, or is there an industry standard?
Great question. So there's person first language, right? Which, so I am a person who uses a wheelchair. The person becomes the person is sort of stated before the disability. And then there's also identity first language, which, like, I'm a disabled person. The identity is before the personal characteristic. And really that comes down to preference of the individual. There's not really an industry standard, and even more so, there's actually often arguments within the disability community as a whole of, like, what is the right language to use, right? Because some think that it's person first, some think that it's identity first, and really it comes down to preference, right? And I personally, I've grown up using person first, but I'm recently kind of getting into the shift of identity first, and so I can kind of use both and think about both. So there's not a standard. It's a preference. And I'm sorry if everyone hears dogs barking in the back. I apologize. They were being so good for almost the hour, and then they just decided to bark. So again, it really just does come down to preference for sure.
All right. Well, Matthew, someone must have rung the doorbell or something, because
I guess
they're on cue right here at the very end, or it's time they want to be fed, something like that. It must be time to eat or something. All right. Well, first of all, on behalf of the Batten School, Matthew, I thank you for taking time to speak with us and all the folks that joined us. And I also want to acknowledge Bobbi and Garrett and the 5 interns who are not with us, on screen here, for the great work that they did over the summer, both on helping us with our overall project, but bringing this issue to us, and Bobbi bringing you to us. So on behalf of the folks that are here that we can't see, and Batten School and UVA in general, I thank you all for attending. And Matthew, I'll give you the time to say some final remarks, and then as we discussed, it kind of ends abruptly, so you get the last word.
Yeah, sure. No, thank you very much. First of all, thank you to Bobbi and Garrett for the great questions, and thank you to everyone for listening. I hope that this conversation sparks in our attendees that we need to continue striving to do more, not only on campus at UVA, but globally around disability and inclusion. And I would love to help UVA to continue to do that work, and help globally to continue to do that work. My goal is to, be a sort of a nationwide voice on these issues. And so I really think this is just a start of the conversation, and I hope it continues from here. But we have a lot of work to do, and like I said, we need everyone in this call and everyone around the world to really be in the fight, whether you are a person with a disability or not. Because like I said, you could be tomorrow, or you could be in the next 30 years as you age. So just think about that as we leave here today. And I would definitely also encourage, if everyone wants to get in contact with me, please visit my website. It's 6wheelsconsulting.com with the number 6. Bobbi, can you put that in the chat for me? Do you mind? Thank you. You're awesome. And I'm also all over social media. on all the major social media platforms. So I'd love to continue the conversation there. But just thank you all for spending the hour with us, and hope to connect with everyone again soon.
Thank you very much,
Yes.
Matthew.
Yes.
And we hope everyone has a great day. We appreciate you all joining us.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Mona.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Millie. I was struggling. Okay, bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. That was awesome.